Friends of the Earth International is the largest environmental network, grassroots environmental network in the world, with more than 80 organizations in 80 countries of the world, with over 2 million members and activists. I'm not going to try to run through this 24 pages proposal that we presented in the third session of the Intergovernmental Working Group negotiating, well, that we started negotiations of the binding treaty on transnational corporations and human rights, but we'll rather make a short reading, so to say, of some of the proposals that we are including here with regards to judicial mechanisms for access to justice. No? First of all, I would contend that our proposal relies on two pillars. No? One, access to justice and remedy for affected peoples and communities, and the other one, stopping corporate impunity. And I would contend as well that that's the only way, facing these two or relying on these two pillars, no, is the only way to prevent new violations from happening and ensuring non-repetition and a lasting solution to the issue of human rights violations by transnational corporations. No? Access to justice and remedy in itself does not prevent or ensure non-repetition. No? I mean, people can get access to justice and get remediation, no? Paid some thousands of dollars, no? Which are peanuts, really, for big corporations like Glencore or Vale or many other corporations that are even bigger than the GDP of most countries in the world. No? So that doesn't help, and that won't help to prevent further violations. No? So only addressing the issue of stopping corporate impunity, which is part of the motto, so to say, of our joint campaign, no? Will ensure a lasting solution to this, even through an instrument like the one we are trying to establish here in the UN Human Rights Council. No? Access to justice and remedy requires, and some of these things have already been said by Chena and by others of our panelists, no? And are some of the things that you can read over here. No? One very essential thing is the reversal of burden of proof. The burden of proof on the victims, on the affected peoples, no? That they have to prove the failure of the companies, no? Or the violations of the companies is a very big obstacle for access to justice. No? China said it. I mean, we need thousands of resources, no, to be able to prove. No? It should be the companies' obligation to prove their innocence, let's say, and that they are running clean operations without violating human rights and the like. No? The recognition that state obligations on human rights do not end at their borders. No? Strengthen international judicial cooperation, no? So that cases brought in one jurisdiction, I mean, in the host country of an investment or where a company is operating, can get judicial cooperation from the home country. You know, something that doesn't exist and it's not still insufficient. You know? Recognize the extraterritorial obligations, like Ana Maria has already told us. No, a very important thing to restrict the common use, actually, of something called the forum non-convenience, a jurisdiction of a tribunal in a home country of a transnational corporation can say, no, I mean, I have no jurisdiction over this case because it's Chevron Canada who is operating here, and the case you're bringing, it was Chevron Ecuador operating in Ecuador. No? So that Canada cannot say, or tribunals in Canada cannot say, you cannot bring this case here, no? For example. As Chena was also saying, allow the affected people to sue both in the host country of the investment or in the home country of the corporation as well. No? Admit universal jurisdiction and an international court where affected people can bring cases directly against corporations, and lift the corporate veil, no? So that judges and people themselves can know the home countries of those corporations and can obtain reparations from those, from the different branches of those corporations whenever that's possible and the case. No? Another important obstacle and requirement to have access to justice that is included in our proposal is addressing the asymmetry of means between the affected peoples and the corporations. No? So, for example, the need to have an exemption of costs for cases of public interest, no? So that the people that have a public interest case, that bring a public interest case, do not have to bear the very high judicial costs of running a case in courts. No? And legal assistance measures such as an international monitoring center on transnational corporations that can give legal assistance to affected communities, no? And probably also a fund, no? So that the legal costs of pursuing a legal suit against a corporation can be borne through a fund and not the affected peoples themselves. No? Another very central issue that we bring about here about access to justice is that all human rights and all human rights violations are covered. No? So it's not just restricted to some human rights, no, or some human rights violations. No? So that everyone who has their rights violated can access justice when they are violated by a transnational corporation. No? And also that collective rights are recognized and that class actions can be admitted in all jurisdictions. I'm saying access to justice is not sufficient as a long-standing solution to the problem of violations of human rights by corporations. No? We need to stop corporate impunity and prevent new violations. That requires, and that is part of what we are saying here, no? First and foremost, no? To establish and implement through obligations for states and for corporations, no? Establishing the primacy of human rights law over commercial trade and investment private law. No? That is made through establishing state obligations. On the one hand, establishing state obligations, for example, to deconstruct what we call the architecture of impunity. We say in the campaign, no, that there's a whole architecture of impunity through the trade and investment agreements, fundamentally, no, that gives impunity to corporations in their operations and has been one of the key pieces of what David was saying of the withdrawment of governments, no, from affairs, so to say, from world affairs. No? That requires, for example, establishing that the state obligation not to accept investor-state dispute settlement in their trade and investment agreements. No? That no privileges for foreign investors and corporations are granted in those same trade and investment agreements. No? Privileges including, for example, tax breaks that are normally given to foreign investors and corporations when they come to invest in a country. No? Establishing the responsibility of TNCs and parent companies over their whole value chains. That is central to stop the corporate impunity. No? Establishing civil, criminal and administrative liability for the corporations, and establishing the concept is the double indictment, both to the directors of the companies, to the natural persons, so to say, the directors of the companies, and to the companies themselves as a juridical person. No? And establishing the responsibilities of the international financial institutions that are normally also those that give the money. No? The World Bank and the multilateral development banks or regional development banks that give the money to corporations to run their projects, and other financiers like pension funds and others. No? And on the other hand, I was talking about establishing obligations for states, but also establishing obligations for corporations, including to respect freedom of association and collective negotiation, to respect the right to strike, not to discriminate women, for example, native populations, black populations, etc., or sexual orientation, no? Or gender orientation, to pay fair salaries for workers and fair prices to their suppliers, no? To pay taxes. No? Without taxes, I mean, not even a judicial system cannot be strengthened if it's not through taxes. Yes, I'm just finishing, yeah. To unveil their corporate structures, identities, relations, no? And centers of decision making. And finally, I mean, to prevent long-term more human rights violations by corporations, no? We need to establish the right of people in their territories to say no to foreign investment and development projects. No? That's key aspects that are included in this proposal, which I invite you to. There in the entrance you will find copies so that you can read them thoroughly. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the time.